High above our planet, in the silent void of space, a storm is brewing, one that doesn't involve thunder or lightning, but instead, millions of fragments of metal and machinery racing at speeds faster than a bullet. This isn't science fiction, it's the reality of space junk, a growing menace that could soon turn the cosmos into humanity's next. But here's the twist. The weapons in this war aren't missiles or lasers, they're abandoned satellites, discarded rocket parts, and shards of debris, all orbiting Earth with the potential to wreak havoc. What happens when these pieces collide? Could they spark a global conflict? And what does this mean for the future of space exploration? In this video, we'll unravel the hidden dangers of space debris, the geopolitical tensions it's fueling, and why this issue is far more urgent than you might think. From the origins of space junk to the high-stakes race to clean it up, this is a story that could redefine humanity's relationship with the stars. So buckle up, because the battle for space is already. From the moment humanity first reached for the stars, we left behind more than just dreams, we left a trail of debris. It all started in the 1950s, when the launch of the first satellites marked the beginning of the space age. But with every satellite sent into orbit, every rocket stage discarded, and every mission completed, we unintentionally created a new kind of pollution: space junk. Over the decades, this clutter has grown into a sprawling cloud of orbital debris, ranging from massive defunct satellites to tiny fragments smaller than a fingernail. Today, space agencies track more than 34,000 pieces larger than 10 centimeters, along with millions of smaller fragments zipping around Earth at staggering speeds. The risks are undeniable. This debris doesn't just float harmlessly. It travels at velocities of up to 28,000 kilometers per hour, turning even the tiniest fragment into a potential projectile. Active satellites, the International Space Station, and even future missions to the Moon or Mars face constant threats from collisions. But how did we get to this point? The answer lies in decades of technological progress and a lack of foresight. Early space missions focused on exploration and innovation, with little thought given to the long-term consequences of leaving behind spent rocket stages or decommissioned satellites. As the number of objects in orbit increased, so did the likelihood of collisions, creating a cascade effect known as the syndrome. This phenomenon describes a scenario where collisions between objects generate even more debris, leading to a domino effect that could render entire orbits unusable. It's a sobering reminder that our actions in space have consequences, and those consequences are now circling above us. But space junk isn't just a technical problem, it's a potential flashpoint for conflict. With so much at stake: communications, navigation, scientific research, and national security, the question of who is responsible for managing this debris becomes increasingly urgent. Could the growing clutter in orbit lead to tensions between nations or even spark a new kind of space war? To answer that, we need to look at how space junk has already begun to shape the geopolitical landscape. Satellites are the unsung heroes of our modern world, quietly orbiting above us to keep everything from GPS navigation to global internet connectivity running smoothly. But this critical infrastructure is under threat, and the danger isn't coming from aliens or rogue asteroids, it's coming from ourselves. The growing cloud of space debris surrounding our planet is turning Earth's orbit into a minefield. Picture this: a tiny screw, no bigger than a dime, hurtling through space at speeds of up to 17,500 miles per hour. At that velocity, even something so small can punch through a satellite like a bullet, shattering it into thousands of new pieces of debris. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario, it's already happening. In 2009, a defunct Russian satellite collided with a functioning American one, creating over 2,000 new fragments of debris. Each of those fragments now poses its own threat, potentially triggering a cascade of collisions. This phenomenon, known as the syndrome, could spiral out of control, turning entire orbits into impassable graveyards of debris. The stakes couldn't be higher. Satellites are the backbone of modern life, enabling everything from weather forecasting and disaster response to military communications and financial transactions. If critical orbits become too cluttered, we could lose access to these services, plunging the world into chaos. And the problem is only getting worse. With nations and private companies launching more satellites than ever before, the risk of collisions and the resulting debris is skyrocketing. But here, where things get even more complicated. As the competition for prime orbital real estate heats up, the potential for conflict grows. Who gets to claim the most valuable orbits? What happens if debris from one country's satellite damages another's? Could these disputes escalate into a new kind of warfare, fought not on land, sea, or air, but in the vast expanse of space? The answers to these questions could shape the future of humanity's relationship with the final frontier. As we push further into the cosmos, the challenge of managing space debris isn't just a technical problem. It's a test of our ability to cooperate on a global scale. Space is no longer a distant frontier controlled by just a handful of nations. Today, more than 80 countries have active space programs, and private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are launching missions at an unprecedented pace. This shift has transformed space into a bustling, competitive arena, but with competition comes the potential for conflict. Imagine this: as more satellites and spacecraft crowd Earth's orbit, disputes over who gets to use which orbital slots could become as contentious as battles over territory here on Earth. Add to that the race to mine asteroids or extract lunar resources, and you've got a recipe for geopolitical friction. One of the most pressing challenges is space debris, an issue that's already causing headaches for satellite operators. But what happens when nations start accusing each other of weaponizing that debris? Picture this scenario. A country claims another intentionally created hazardous debris to disrupt their satellites, leading to accusations, counter-accusations, and even retaliatory actions. Without clear international agreements to govern these disputes, the risk of escalation is real. The Outer Space Treaty, signed back in the 1960s, was groundbreaking for its time, but it wasn't designed to handle the complexities of today's space economy. So how do we prevent space from becoming the next battlefield? Some experts argue for stricter international regulations, while others believe that collaboration between nations and private companies is the key. Think about it. If countries and corporations work together to clean up debris, share orbital data, and establish clear rules for resource extraction, we might avoid the worst-case scenarios. But will nations be willing to set aside their rivalries for the sake of preserving the space environment? The stakes couldn't be higher. If we fail to address these tensions, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for space exploration, but for life on Earth. After all, our modern world relies heavily on satellites for communication, navigation, and even national security. A conflict in space could disrupt all of that, sending ripples through our global systems. The question isn't just about how we navigate this new frontier, it's about whether we can do so peacefully. As we gaze up at the night sky, it's easy to forget that the vast expanse above us is becoming increasingly cluttered with our own creations. The syndrome, first theorized by NASA scientists back in 1978, paints a chilling picture of what could happen if we don't address the growing problem of space debris. Imagine a chain reaction where one collision between two pieces of debris creates hundreds of smaller fragments, each capable of causing even more collisions. Over time, this cascade could fill Earth's orbit with so much junk that launching satellites, maintaining the International Space Station, or even sending astronauts to other planets becomes impossible. What makes this scenario so alarming is how close we are to reaching that tipping point. With over 120 million pieces of debris currently orbiting our planet, from defunct satellites to discarded rocket stages, the risk of collisions is skyrocketing. Experts estimate that if we continue at this pace, the syndrome could become a reality within just a few decades. The implications are staggering. Not only could it halt space exploration, but it could also disrupt essential services like global communication, weather forecasting, and even GPS navigation, systems we've come to rely on in our daily lives. But here's the real question: are we doing enough to prevent this? While organizations like NASA and the European Space Agency are actively working on solutions, such as debris removal technologies and stricter regulations for satellite disposal, progress is slow. The scale of the problem requires global cooperation, innovative thinking, and significant investment. Yet, as the clock ticks, the urgency grows. The syndrome isn't just a distant threat. It's a wake-up call for humanity to act before we lose access to the stars forever. As the skies above us grow increasingly crowded with space debris, the race to clean up our orbital environment is heating up. Organizations like the European Space Agency, or ESA, and innovative private companies such as are leading the charge, developing cutting-edge technologies to tackle this monumental challenge. Picture a robotic arm delicately reaching out to grab a defunct satellite, or a net unfurling in zero gravity to ensnare a tumbling piece of metal. Some projects even explore using harpoons to anchor and retrieve larger objects, while others are experimenting with lasers to vaporize smaller fragments before they can cause harm. These solutions sound like something out of science fiction, but they're very real and they're being tested right now. Yet, as promising as these efforts are, they're not without hurdles. The cost of developing and deploying these technologies is staggering, and the technical complexities of operating in the harsh environment of space add another layer of difficulty. Imagine trying to catch a speeding bullet while blindfolded. That's the level of precision required to capture fast-moving debris in orbit. And it's not just about the technology. International collaboration is critical. Space debris doesn't respect borders, and no single nation can solve this problem alone. Cooperation between countries, sharing resources, and agreeing on regulations will be key to making large-scale cleanup operations feasible. But even with these challenges, the work being done today gives us a glimpse of hope. The question is, will it be enough? With thousands of pieces of debris already in orbit and thousands more being added every year, the scale of the problem is immense. Are we doing too little too late? Or could these early efforts pave the way for a cleaner, safer space environment for generations to come? The stakes couldn't be higher. Our ability to explore, communicate, and even navigate depends on it. Space has long been considered the final frontier, but it's also a frontier without clear rules for the modern era. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967, signed by over 100 countries, was a landmark agreement that laid the groundwork for space exploration. It declared that no nation could claim ownership of celestial bodies like the Moon or Mars, and emphasized that space should be used for peaceful purposes. But here's the catch: this treaty was drafted during the Cold War, when space was dominated by just two superpowers, and the concept of space debris wasn't even on the radar. Fast forward to today, and the treaty feels like a relic of a bygone era, ill-equipped to handle the complexities of a crowded orbital environment. The issue isn't just about outdated rules, it's about the glaring gaps in how we address space debris. Right now, there's no international framework to determine who's responsible for cleaning up defunct satellites, spent rocket stages, or the millions of smaller fragments swirling around Earth. Even more troubling is the lack of clear guidelines on what happens if a country or company deliberately damages another's assets in orbit. Could a rogue actor disable a satellite and claim it was an accident? Without updated laws, the potential for conflict looms large. As more nations and private companies launch missions into space, the stakes are higher than ever. Think of it like this: if you're driving on a highway, there are traffic laws, speed limits, and consequences for reckless behavior. But in space, it's more like the Wild West: few rules, minimal enforcement, and everyone's trying to stake their claim. The absence of robust international regulations isn't just a bureaucratic oversight, it's a ticking time bomb. Without clear accountability, the risk of disputes, or even outright warfare over space junk becomes all too real. So as we look to the future, one question looms large. How do we rewrite the rulebook for space before it's too late? The rise of private space companies has undeniably transformed the way we explore and utilize the cosmos. But this rapid expansion comes with a significant challenge: space debris. Companies like SpaceX, OneWeb, and others are leading the charge in deploying massive satellite constellations, aiming to provide global internet coverage, improve communication networks, and even support future space tourism. Yet, every satellite launched adds to the growing cloud of objects orbiting Earth, objects that, if not managed properly, could collide and create even more debris in a dangerous chain reaction known as syndrome. Take SpaceX's project, for example. With plans to deploy tens of thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit, the sheer scale of this initiative is unprecedented. While the benefits of global connectivity are undeniable, the risks are equally hard to ignore. Each satellite, even the smallest, becomes a potential hazard in an already crowded orbital environment. And it's not just SpaceX. OneWeb, Amazon's project, and others are racing to establish their own constellations, further compounding the issue. To their credit, many of these companies are investing in debris mitigation technologies. SpaceX, for instance, has designed its satellites to at the end of their operational life, burning up in the atmosphere to avoid adding to the clutter. Similarly, OneWeb has committed to responsible practices, including collision avoidance systems and sustainable satellite disposal. But critics argue that these measures, while commendable, may not be enough to keep pace with the sheer volume of launches. The concern is that the drive for innovation and market dominance could overshadow the need for long-term orbital sustainability. This tension between progress and responsibility raises a critical question. How can private companies balance their ambitious goals with the urgent need to protect Earth's orbital environment? Some experts suggest stricter international regulations, while others advocate for collaborative efforts between governments and private entities to establish universal standards. The challenge lies in finding a solution that encourages innovation without compromising safety, a delicate tightrope walk that could define the future of space exploration. As we look ahead, one thing is clear: the role of private companies in shaping space debris management will only grow. Whether through groundbreaking technologies, responsible practices, or collaborative frameworks, their actions will have a lasting impact on the sustainability of space. The question isn't just about how they'll manage debris. It's about whether they can lead the way in ensuring that the final frontier remains accessible for generations to come. As nations continue to expand their presence beyond Earth, the militarization of space is no longer a distant possibility. It's a reality unfolding before our eyes. Satellites, once seen as tools for communication and exploration, are now critical components of national security. Countries are actively developing anti-satellite weapons, capable of destroying these vital systems in the blink of an eye. But here's the catch. Every time a satellite is obliterated, it leaves behind a cloud of debris, turning what was once a strategic maneuver into a long-term hazard for everyone. Imagine this scenario. A single test of an anti-satellite missile shatters a satellite into thousands of fragments, each traveling at speeds of up to 17,500 miles per hour. These shards don't just vanish, they linger in orbit, creating a minefield of space junk that threatens not only military operations, but also civilian infrastructure. What begins as a tactical advantage could quickly spiral into a global crisis, as one nation's actions endanger the entire orbital environment. And it doesn't stop there. Some experts warn that space debris itself could be weaponized. Picture a scenario where a country deliberately creates a debris field to disrupt an adversary's satellite network, crippling their communication, navigation, or surveillance capabilities. The implications are staggering. A single act of sabotage could render entire constellations of satellites useless, plunging regions into chaos without a single shot being fired on Earth. The potential for conflict in space is no longer theoretical, it's a growing concern. As nations race to secure their interests in orbit, the line between defense and provocation becomes increasingly blurred. Could space junk become the next battlefield? The answer, unfortunately, seems to be tilting toward yes. The question we must now ask is not just how we protect our assets in space, but how we prevent the heavens from becoming a theater of war. The stakes are high, and the clock is ticking. As we look to the skies, the growing cloud of space debris presents a problem that demands equally bold solutions. Enter the realm of technological innovation, where scientists and engineers are pushing the boundaries of what's possible to clean up our orbital backyard. One of the most promising ideas is the concept of space tugs, robotic spacecraft designed to latch onto defunct satellites or debris and guide them safely back into Earth's atmosphere, where they can burn up harmlessly. Think of them as cosmic tow trucks, clearing the cosmic highways for future missions. But why stop there? Another fascinating approach involves solar sails, lightweight, reflective sheets that harness the pressure of sunlight to gently nudge debris out of orbit. These sails could be attached to larger pieces of junk, slowly but surely steering them away from collision courses without the need for fuel. It's a quiet, elegant solution that leverages the natural forces of space itself. And then there are electrodynamic tethers, which use Earth's magnetic field to generate a drag force, gradually pulling debris down to lower orbits where it can safely disintegrate. These tethers are like invisible fishing lines, reeling in the chaos of space junk. Perhaps the most intriguing idea of all is the possibility of repurposing debris. Imagine turning old satellites and spent rocket stages into raw materials for in-space manufacturing. Instead of just cleaning up, we could be building a sustainable future in orbit, creating new structures or tools from what was once considered waste. It's a vision that transforms the problem into an opportunity, blending cleanup efforts with innovation. Of course, these technologies are still in their early stages. Scaling them up to handle the sheer volume of debris and securing the funding to make it happen remains a significant hurdle. But the potential is undeniable. With every breakthrough, we move closer to a future where Earth's orbit is not a cluttered junkyard, but a thriving hub of exploration and discovery. The question is, which of these innovations will lead the charge? And how soon can we make it a reality? Space debris isn't just a hazard floating silently above us. It's a ticking economic time bomb. Every piece of junk orbiting Earth has the potential to wreak havoc on the infrastructure we rely on daily. Think about it, a single collision with a rogue piece of debris could obliterate a satellite worth billions of dollars, crippling global communications, disrupting weather forecasts, and even delaying critical space missions. The ripple effects of such an event would be felt across industries, from telecommunications to agriculture and beyond. But the financial toll doesn't stop there. Insurance companies are already feeling the pressure. As the risk of collisions increases, so do the premiums for satellite operators. What was once a manageable cost is now skyrocketing, forcing companies to rethink their budgets. And it's not just about insurance. Space agencies and private firms are investing heavily in debris mitigation technologies, from tracking systems to advanced shielding. These measures come with a hefty price tag, and those costs are inevitably passed down to consumers. The long-term economic impact of unchecked space debris is staggering. Imagine a future where launching satellites becomes prohibitively expensive, or where entire industries are forced to halt operations because the skies are too cluttered to navigate safely. The global economy thrives on connectivity and innovation, but space junk threatens to put the brakes on both. So the question isn't just how we'll clean up the mess, it's how we'll adapt to the growing financial burden of this orbital crisis. Will governments and businesses step up to fund solutions? Or will we wait until the cost of inaction becomes too great to ignore? It's easy to think of space junk as a problem confined to the cosmos, but its effects ripple back to Earth in unexpected ways. When defunct satellites or discarded rocket parts re-enter the atmosphere, they don't just vanish, they burn up, releasing chemicals and particles into the air. These emissions, while seemingly small on an individual scale, add up over time, contributing to atmospheric changes that could influence our climate. What's more, the metals and other materials in space debris don't just disappear, they disperse, potentially altering the delicate balance of our planet's upper atmosphere. But the environmental impact doesn't stop there. Efforts to clean up space debris are energy-intensive, often requiring advanced technology and significant fuel consumption. Launching missions to capture or junk, while necessary, could inadvertently increase carbon emissions. It's a paradox. The very solutions designed to tackle one problem might exacerbate another. This raises a critical question. Can we find a way to address space junk without worsening our carbon footprint? The connection between space debris and climate change isn't just a technical challenge. It's a reminder of how interconnected our actions are. Every satellite launched, every rocket fired, and every piece of debris left behind has consequences that extend far beyond the void of space. As we work to clean up the mess we've made above, we must also consider how those efforts align with our broader environmental goals. Could innovative technologies like solar-powered debris removal systems or reusable spacecraft offer a way to tackle both problems simultaneously? This intersection of space and climate challenges also invites us to think bigger. What if solving the issue of space debris could unlock new strategies for addressing climate change? For instance, the same technologies used to monitor and clean up space junk could be adapted to track pollutants or manage waste here on Earth. The lessons learned from managing the orbital environment might just provide a blueprint for tackling environmental issues closer to home. Ultimately, the question isn't just about cleaning up space. It's about how we approach problem solving in a way that considers the full scope of our impact. As we look to the stars, we must also keep our feet firmly on the ground, recognizing that the choices we make today will shape not just the future of space exploration, but the future of our planet as well. The growing issue of space debris isn't just a technical or environmental challenge, it's also a deeply ethical one. As we continue to launch satellites, rockets, and other technologies into orbit, we're leaving behind a trail of debris that could have lasting consequences. This raises a critical question. Who is responsible for the mess we're creating in space, and what obligations do we have to clean it up? Nations and private companies are racing to expand their presence in orbit, but with great power comes great responsibility. Should those who create space debris be held accountable for its removal? It's a thorny issue, especially when you consider that not all countries have the same resources or capabilities. For some, the cost of cleanup might be prohibitive, while others might simply refuse to take responsibility. This imbalance raises concerns about fairness and equity in how we address the problem. But the ethical questions go even deeper. Space isn't just a resource for us today, it's a shared frontier that belongs to future generations as well. What kind of legacy are we leaving for them? If we continue to clutter Earth's orbit with debris, we risk rendering entire regions of space unusable. Imagine a world where launching a satellite becomes too dangerous because of the risk of collision with debris. That's not a distant nightmare, it's a real possibility if we don't act now. This brings us to the heart of the issue. How do we balance the drive for progress with the need to protect the orbital environment? On one hand, space exploration and satellite technology have brought incredible benefits, from global connectivity to scientific breakthroughs. On the other hand, unchecked growth could lead to irreversible damage. Finding that balance requires a global ethical framework, a set of principles that guide how we use and care for space. Such a framework would need to address tough questions. Who gets to decide what's acceptable in orbit? How do we enforce rules when space is governed by international treaties rather than a single authority? And perhaps most importantly, how do we ensure that all voices are heard, not just those of the most powerful nations or corporations? These aren't easy questions to answer, but they're essential if we want to create a sustainable future in space. The ethics of space debris remind us that progress isn't just about moving forward, it's about moving forward responsibly. As we continue to push the boundaries of what's possible, we must also consider the long-term impact of our actions. After all, space is a shared resource, and how we treat it today will shape the opportunities available to humanity for generations to come. While the threat of space debris looms large over our orbital environment, one of the biggest challenges isn't just the technical solutions. It's getting people to recognize the problem in the first place. For most of us, space feels distant, almost abstract, which makes it hard to connect with the idea of garbage floating above our planet. But here's the thing. space debris isn't just a niche concern for scientists and engineers. It's an issue that could impact everything from global communication networks to weather forecasting, and even our ability to explore the cosmos. So, how do we bridge that gap and make space junk a topic that matters to everyone? The answer lies in public awareness and advocacy. Right now, the average person doesn't think much about satellite collisions or the growing cloud of debris orbiting Earth. But imagine if we could show them how this invisible problem could one day disrupt their daily lives, whether it's losing GPS navigation, delayed internet services, or even canceled flights due to satellite interference. These are real-world consequences that can make the issue feel immediate and personal. This is where advocacy groups and educational campaigns come in. Organizations like Clear Space and initiatives like the European Space Agency's Clean Space program are already working to shed light on the problem. They're using social media, documentaries, and even experiences to make the concept of space debris relatable. For instance, imagine an app that lets you track pieces of space junk in real time, or a virtual reality simulation that shows what a cluttered orbit looks like up close. Tools like these can turn an abstract idea into something tangible and engaging. But awareness alone isn't enough. It has to lead to action. That's why advocacy is so critical. By building a grassroots movement of informed and passionate individuals, we can push governments and private companies to invest in cleanup technologies and sustainable space practices. Think about it. If millions of people started demanding solutions, it could create the political and financial momentum needed to tackle this issue head-on. So how do we inspire more people to care about space junk? It starts with storytelling. Instead of bombarding people with technical jargon, we need to frame the problem in a way that resonates. Talk about how space debris could jeopardize future missions to Mars, or how it threatens the satellites that power our modern world. Use analogies, like comparing the buildup of space junk to a traffic jam that could one day grind space travel to a halt. Most importantly, remind people that this isn't just a problem for the next generation. It's something we need to address today. By engaging the public, we can transform space debris from an obscure scientific issue into a shared global priority. It's about creating a sense of collective responsibility, where everyone from policymakers to everyday citizens feels empowered to be part of the solution. After all, the stars belong to all of us, and keeping them within reach starts with cleaning up our cosmic backyard. The year 2009 marked a turning point in how we think about space debris. On February 10th, a defunct Russian satellite, Cosmos 2251, collided with an active U.S. communications satellite, Iridium-33, at a staggering speed of nearly 26,000 miles per hour. This wasn't just a minor bump. It was a catastrophic event that shattered both satellites into thousands of fragments, instantly adding to the already crowded orbital environment. To put it into perspective, the collision produced over 2,000 pieces of trackable debris, each capable of causing further damage. And that's just the debris we can see. Countless smaller fragments, too tiny to track, now orbit Earth like an invisible minefield. This incident wasn't just a wake-up call for space agencies. It was a stark reminder of how fragile our orbital infrastructure really is. For decades, space was seen as vast and empty, but the reality is far more crowded. The collision revealed a critical gap in our ability to monitor and predict the movement of objects in orbit. At the time, there was no system in place to actively prevent such collisions, even though both satellites were being tracked. The lack of coordination between nations and the absence of clear protocols for collision avoidance left the door wide open for disaster. But beyond the immediate risks, the 2009 collision also raised questions about accountability. Who's responsible when space debris causes damage? In this case, both satellites were operating in a shared orbital zone, but there were no established rules for determining fault or liability. This incident highlighted the potential for international tension, especially as more countries and private companies launch satellites into orbit. Imagine a scenario where a piece of debris from one nation's satellite damages another's multi-million-dollar spacecraft. How would such a dispute be resolved? So, what lessons can we take from this event to prevent future disasters? First and foremost, it underscored the urgent need for better tracking systems. Today, advancements in radar and optical technologies are helping us monitor smaller debris, but we're still playing catch-up. Second, it highlighted the importance of international cooperation. Space is a shared resource, and no single nation can tackle the problem of space junk alone. Initiatives like the Space Data Association, which fosters collaboration among satellite operators, are steps in the right direction, but more comprehensive agreements are needed. Finally, the collision reminded us of the need for active debris removal technologies. Cleaning up space isn't just a nice-to-have, it's essential for the sustainability of our orbital environment. The 2009 satellite collision wasn't just a one-off event. It was a glimpse into a future where space debris could render entire orbits unusable. By learning from this incident, we can take steps to ensure that space remains a safe and accessible frontier for generations to come. But as we'll see next, the challenges of space debris go beyond collisions. There's also the looming threat of what happens when debris begins to multiply uncontrollably. As the dream of space tourism becomes a reality, with companies like Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin launching civilians into the cosmos, a new challenge emerges, one that's invisible yet potentially catastrophic. Picture this: you're strapped into your seat, gazing out at the breathtaking curvature of Earth, when suddenly, a tiny piece of space debris, no larger than a pebble, hurtles toward your spacecraft at thousands of miles per hour. It's a scenario that seems straight out of a sci-fi thriller, but for the burgeoning space tourism industry, it's a very real concern. Space debris, often referred to as space junk, is the leftover remnants of decades of human space exploration, discarded rocket stages, defunct satellites, and even fragments from collisions. With over 128 million pieces of debris orbiting Earth, according to the European Space Agency, the risk of these objects colliding with spacecraft is growing exponentially. For space tourism companies, this isn't just a technical challenge, it's a matter of life and death. Ensuring the safety of passengers means not only designing state-of-the-art vehicles, but also developing advanced systems to detect and avoid debris in real time. But here's the twist: as more tourists venture into space, the problem could worsen. Every new launch adds to the clutter, creating a vicious cycle. Imagine a future where space travel becomes as common as air travel, thousands of spacecraft orbiting Earth, each one a potential source of debris if something goes wrong. The stakes are high, and the question looms: can space tourism coexist with the growing threat of orbital clutter? To tackle this, companies are turning to cutting-edge technology. Collision avoidance systems, powered by artificial intelligence, are being developed to track debris and calculate safe trajectories. Meanwhile, regulatory bodies are pushing for stricter guidelines on debris mitigation, urging companies to design spacecraft that minimize waste and include mechanisms. But will these measures be enough? As the industry expands, the balance between innovation and responsibility will determine whether space tourism can soar safely or become another contributor to the chaos above. As we look to the skies, it's clear that the growing cloud of space debris is a problem too vast and complex for humans to tackle alone. That's where artificial intelligence steps in, not as a futuristic fantasy, but as a practical, game-changing tool already reshaping how we approach this challenge. Picture this: millions of pieces of debris zipping around Earth at unimaginable speeds, each one a potential hazard. Tracking and predicting their movements manually would be like trying to count raindrops in a storm. But with AI, we're no longer just reacting to the chaos, we're staying one step ahead. Machine learning algorithms, for instance, are now capable of analyzing massive datasets to predict collision risks with incredible accuracy. These systems can process information from radar and telescopes, identify patterns, and alert operators before a dangerous encounter occurs. It's like having a cosmic traffic controller that never sleeps, constantly monitoring the skies to keep satellites and spacecraft safe. But AI doesn't stop at prediction. It's also revolutionizing how we clean up the mess. By optimizing debris removal missions, AI can determine the most efficient paths and methods for capturing or space junk, saving time, fuel, and resources. Perhaps even more fascinating is the idea of AI-powered satellites that can autonomously navigate around debris. Imagine a spacecraft equipped with real-time decision-making capabilities, able to detect and dodge hazards without human intervention. This isn't science fiction, it's the direction we're heading. These smart satellites could drastically reduce the risk of collisions and extend the of critical space infrastructure. But the question remains, how far can AI take us in solving the space debris crisis? While its potential is immense, it's not a silver bullet. AI still relies on accurate data, robust systems, and human oversight to function effectively. Yet, as these technologies evolve, they could become the backbone of a cleaner, safer orbital environment, one where the skies above us are as navigable as the highways below. Space is no longer just the final frontier, it's a battlefield of strategic importance. For nations around the world, satellites are the backbone of national security, providing everything from real-time intelligence to secure communication networks. Imagine a scenario where a critical military satellite is taken out by a rogue piece of space debris. The consequences could be catastrophic, disrupting everything from missile defense systems to global surveillance. This isn't science fiction, it's a very real and growing concern. The issue of space junk isn't just about cluttering Earth's orbit, it's about protecting the assets that keep nations safe. Satellites are vulnerable targets, and even a small piece of debris traveling at thousands of miles per hour can cause irreparable damage. For countries that rely on these technologies for defense, the stakes couldn't be higher. This has led to a surge in investments aimed at developing solutions, from advanced tracking systems to debris-clearing technologies. But here's the catch. As more nations race to secure their interests in space, the risk of collisions and further debris creation only increases. What does this mean for the future of national security? For one, it's forcing governments to rethink their strategies. Traditional military doctrines are expanding to include space as a domain of warfare, with a focus on safeguarding orbital assets. Some countries are even exploring the idea of space traffic control systems to monitor and manage the growing clutter. But with so many players in the mix, collaboration becomes a challenge. How do you balance national security concerns with the need for international cooperation in addressing a problem that affects everyone? This tension between competition and cooperation is at the heart of the issue. On one hand, nations are developing their own technologies to protect their satellites, which could lead to an arms race in orbit. On the other hand, the shared threat of space debris highlights the need for global solutions. The question isn't just about who can protect their assets, it's about how humanity can work together to preserve the space environment for future generations. As we look ahead, one thing is clear: space debris isn't just a scientific or environmental problem. It's a national security challenge that will shape the way nations think about defense, diplomacy, and the future of warfare. The decisions made today will determine whether space remains a shared resource or becomes a contested. And with so much at stake, the clock is ticking. The challenge of space debris isn't just a technical problem. It's a test of our ability to work together on a global scale. With thousands of defunct satellites, spent rocket stages, and countless fragments orbiting Earth, the issue transcends borders. No single nation or company can solve this alone. It's a puzzle that demands collaboration, shared resources, and a unified vision. Take, for example, the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, or COPUOS. Established decades ago, this body has been instrumental in fostering dialogue among nations about the responsible use of outer space. But as the debris problem grows more urgent, so too must our collective efforts. COPUOS represents a foundation, but it's only the beginning. What's needed now are concrete actions, agreements on debris removal, standardized practices for satellite disposal, and innovative technologies that can be shared across borders. Private companies are also stepping up, developing solutions like robotic arms, nets, and even laser systems to capture or debris. But without international coordination, these efforts risk being piecemeal or even counterproductive. Imagine one country using a laser to nudge debris out of orbit, only for it to collide with another nation's satellite. To avoid such scenarios, we need universal guidelines and a shared commitment to space sustainability. The question isn't just can humanity unite to tackle this challenge, it's will we? Space debris doesn't discriminate. It threatens every satellite, every mission, and every nation equally. The stakes are too high for competition to overshadow cooperation. If we can come together to address this issue, it could set a powerful precedent for solving other global challenges, from climate change to resource scarcity. The debris orbiting our planet is a tangible reminder that Earth is our shared home, and its protection requires all of us to work as one. Space debris isn't just a technical problem, it's a defining challenge for humanity's future in the cosmos. Picture this: millions of fragments, from tiny screws to defunct satellites, hurtling around Earth at speeds faster than a bullet. These remnants of our spacefaring ambitions aren't just clutter, they're a growing threat that could lock us out of the stars entirely. If we don't tackle this issue head-on, the dream of colonizing Mars, mining asteroids, or even maintaining essential satellite networks could slip through our fingers. The stakes couldn't be higher. But here, the flip side. Imagine a future where we've mastered the art of cleaning up space. A future where we've turned what was once a hazard into an opportunity. Effective debris management could unlock a new golden age of space exploration. Think about it. Clearer orbits mean safer launches, more reliable satellites, and the ability to build massive structures in space without fear of catastrophic collisions. It's not just about avoiding disaster. It's about creating a foundation for innovation that could propel us to new frontiers. The choices we make today will echo across generations. Do we want a future where humanity is confined to Earth, gazing longingly at the stars but unable to reach them? Or do we want a future where we've harnessed the lessons of our past to build a thriving presence in space? The answer lies in how we approach this challenge. Will we prioritize short-term gains, or will we invest in the long-term vision of a sustainable, debris-free space environment? This isn't just about technology, it's about vision. It's about the kind of future we want to leave for the next generation. A future where space is open for exploration, innovation, and adventure. Or a future where we're trapped on a planet we've already stretched to its limits. The path we choose will determine whether we become a spacefaring civilization or a footnote in the history of the cosmos. So what kind of future do we want to create? The answer starts with the actions we take today. Space junk isn't just a collection of forgotten debris orbiting Earth. It's a problem that could shape the future of humanity's relationship with space. Every piece of discarded rocket, every defunct satellite, and every fragment from collisions adds to a growing cloud of danger that threatens not only our current technology, but also our ambitions for exploration. The risks are real, from critical satellites being damaged to the potential for cascading collisions that could render entire orbits unusable. And as more nations and private companies venture into space, the risk of conflict over this celestial clutter only grows. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about challenges. It's also a story about opportunity. The fight against space junk has already sparked incredible innovation, from advanced tracking systems to cleanup technologies like robotic arms and harpoons designed to capture and remove debris. What's more, it's a challenge that demands global collaboration. No single country or company can solve this alone. It's going to take a united effort, driven by shared responsibility and a vision for a sustainable future in space. The stakes are as high as the orbits where this debris floats. If we don't act, we risk losing access to vital technologies that power our daily lives, from GPS to weather forecasting. Worse, we could see space become a where competition over limited resources and safe orbits leads to tension and conflict. But if we rise to the challenge, we can ensure that space remains a place of discovery, innovation, and cooperation. A frontier where humanity can thrive, not just survive. The battle against space junk is one we can't afford to lose. It's a fight for the future of space itself. So let's keep pushing for solutions, for collaboration, and for a shared commitment to keeping space clean and accessible for generations to come. What do you think? How should we tackle this growing problem? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. And if you want to dive deeper into the future of technology and space, be sure to subscribe for more. Together, we can turn this challenge into an opportunity for Earth, for space, and for all of us.